Yo, welcome back to another Pokemon Scarlet Violet VGC video. I'm your host, Jose Rocks VGC, and today we're going to be getting into our new series called Spotlight. So Spotlight is going to be basically where we acknowledge a Pokemon that's been pretty relevant in the meta, whether it's just randomly wanting to acknowledge one, or whether a tournament or regional or internationals just passed and we just want to point out something that did really good. So in regards to this video, we're going to be speaking about Azumarill. So Azumarill this past weekend showed up a lot in the meta, and I kind of wanted to go over it and why people are kind of gravitating towards it rather than using some of the other powerful water types in the format. All right, so with Azumarill. First thing we want to know about, so what makes Azumarill different from the other water types? To distinguish it, we got to first bring up the other water types. So some of the other relevant water types that are in the format right now would be Iron Bundle. Let's see, Dondozo. We all know that's pretty relevant. Palafin. Gyarados. And I guess we would say his 6-1 as a filler is kind of Rotom Wash. Rotom is pretty relevant. It's not as relevant as the first these 5, but it is a close 6. And I don't want to name Pelipper because Pelipper is not really, doesn't play any type of similar role to these. Pelipper is more so a support. It can be offensive, but it's more so there to set up the rain, right, and support the other water types. So Gyarados is closer to support than the other ones are, but Gyarados can be offensive. So what does Azumarill do different from these that makes it pretty relevant? So first off, why you would want to use Azumarill as your water type is that these two actually aren't really in competition with it, Rotom and Iron Bundle, due to the fact that they're special attackers, right? So we can go ahead and put them to the back of the list, put Iron Bundle back there. So these are Azumarill's main competition, because I don't see any reason why you couldn't run an Iron Bundle on the same team as Azumarill, but you really wouldn't want to run 2 of these on the same team, right? So the idea behind Azumarill is that with Dondozo, most likely, I would say 8 times out of 10, you're going to see Dondozo with Tatsugiri, right? And so Tatsugiri boosts Dondozo's stats by +2 in every stat category, so it gets an Omni boost. And while that is good, it kind of is predictable, as well as it leaves you vulnerable to only having one Pokemon on the field at a time, and you cannot switch. You're locked in on the field. So it is a physical attacker just like Azumarill, but Azumarill is not stuck on the field unless there's like Got the Tail or Duck Trio doing Arena Trap, Shadow Tag, things like that. Otherwise, Azumarill is not stuck on the field. So that's one reason what makes it why you would want to use it, so you're not locked into a Pokemon that's like kind of standard and it's going to be stuck on the field. And a lot of teams have game plans around not immediately losing to Dondozo. So that's why Azumarill. So Azumarill, the set that you see that I saw most recently was Life Orb, Water Terror, of course Play Rough, Liquidation, Aqua Jet, and Protect. So this is a pretty good set. This is a powerful set. So with Life Orb, Water Terror, Aqua Jets, you're pretty much like dealing huge amounts of damage to anything on the field that's weak, that's not really physically defensive. And you're doing like 50% to things that even if they resisted, if the rain is up, it's just dealing damage, good damage across the board. And so why you want to use Azumarill over Palafin is because they do similar things where they are both offensive physical attackers. Azumarill is not locked into having to switch out like Palafin is. So while Palafin is a better Pokemon, Azumarill is better immediately than Palafin is, because Palafin starts off in a baby form, correct? So Azumarill usually comes out on lead. If it does come out on lead, it doesn't have to immediately switch out. It threatens with damage right from the get-go, and that's due to huge power and then, you know, Water Terror and it being a powerful physical water type attacker. So Palafin has to switch out in order to get that boost. Some people, you know, play around and might surprise you with the baby Palafin and things like that, but that's only against like Pokemon that it has a chance to. Against like bulky teams and things like that, like baby Palafin is not going to be able to put a dent into anything without switching out, right? So that's the reason why you want to use Azumarill over Palafin. Now, the other reason why you want to use Azumarill over Gyarados. Now, Gyarados is another physical attacker, but Azumarill mirrors these two as far as his role, more so than Gyarados is. But I've seen some offensive Gyarados with like Dragon Dance, things like that. But the thing about Gyarados is it takes a turn to get set up as far as Dragon Dance if it wants to be physical attacker and deal big damage. It has to set up a Dragon Dance, right, before it can see any meaningful damage come out, whether it's Azumarill is immediately offensive and a threat on the field. Also, Gyarados sometimes can be passive if it's a support set. If you have Pokemon on the field like ground types or electric types, or just things like Goldengo, Garganacl that can't be paralyzed, can't be taunted like Goldengo, then Gyarados is not really that effective, right? Or if you have electric types that can like remove it from the field, it's 4 times weak to electric, as Azumarill is not. Azumarill does carry a different weakness, which is a weakness to poison, but that's not nearly as common as people taking on electric type attacks to deal with like Gyarados and other water types. Just specifically them having electric type coverage for Palafin and Dondozo, like Specs Fluttermane, automatically just counters Gyarados, and Azumarill's not as weak to electric types as Gyarados is, right? And though you can tear Gyarados away from the electric weakness, that's case to case situations, because why would you want to burn your Terra then be weak against something in the end game? Like if you go to like a Steel Terra, then you're kind of like, you take damage from Great Tusk, which is very common in the format, and now you're weak to ground types. Even though you got around that electric weakness, most likely they have a ground type attack on their team, and now you're weak to that. So you don't always want to burn your Terra immediately on Gyarados. So that's another reason why Azumarill could be used over it, because it's not passive like Gyarados is. Now, there is some belly drum sets out there, which makes Azumarill take a little while to get set up, but I wouldn't recommend the belly drum sets in the current format. It's not that good right now. You could go for like Follow Me and fake out belly drums and go for like powered up Aqua Jets, but I just don't feel like it's the best set for Azumarill. Also, it gets Sap Sipper, which make you immune to grass moves, which is another set. You can go Sap Sipper and then belly drum, and I feel like that's a pretty decent set, but I wouldn't recommend it. I recommend like this set, or even like safety goggles, so you get around the Amoonguss Rage Powder and Spores, and Sleep Powders from like Vivian or Jump Bluff, Lilligant, things like that. So it is a good counter for that. In my opinion, I do believe that these three are more consistent. Well, these four, I would say Iron Bundle 2, are more consistent than Azumarill. You could get a little more out of Rotom due to the ground immunity and only being weak to grass. So it could be just as consistent as Azumarill. But this video, we're spotlighting just Azumarill being a good Pokemon and being viable, because you can go with any one of these and still have like a pretty good water type to go along with your fire, water, grass core if you're building one of those type of cores with your team. And Azumarill won't hold you back, and you won't be missing much if you use this over these Pokemon, if you get what I'm saying. They all have their own niches, but like I said, Azumarill threatens immediate damage, right? And I always feel like that's pretty good. It's going to continue to rise in its viability. I don't believe that Azumarill is going to be completely meta. I think that it will be figured out, and people will just bring counters for it, not specifically for Azumarill, but they're bringing counters for other Pokemon that also counter Azumarill, and it might kind of fall off. Another downside to it is that it's pretty slow, right? As opposed to, you know, Dondozo with the +2 speed boost, Palafin, once it switches out, switches back in, has the priority powerful jet punches. Even though Azumarill gets Aqua Jet, like Palafin jet punch is just a souped up Aqua Jet, right? Plus Palafin hits harder. Also, Palafin is a bit better with balance teams, in my opinion. I feel like Azumarill, even though it's a water type, it doesn't really fit well with balance teams because it's not really good to swap it around, right? Azumarill likes to come out and threaten damage, pick up KOs, and not really switch out, right? Unless you like get yawned or anything like that. And then Gyarados, you know, everybody knows what it's doing right now in the format. It's Thunder Waving everything. It's taunting Amoonguss. It's Dragon Dancing. It's going for Iron Heads plus Thunder Waves to get flinches and full pairs and things like that. Iron Bundle, we know it's gonna go for Specs Blizzard, or it's gonna be a Booster Energy set with Freeze Dry, Hydro Pump, Icy Wind to slow you down, or it's gonna have Encore and force you into taking your pieces off the field, or not being able to protect in front of it, right? Or not feeling comfortable protecting in front of it out of fear of being Encore. So that's just some of the things that, you know, that these bring to the table. But I do recommend trying out Azumarill, seeing if it fits your team. You might like it a little better than some of the other choices because it is not locked into certain things like being stuck on the field or having to switch out immediately, right? Or being 4 times weak to electric, right? So those are some of the downsides to these 3. And like I said, it has a different role from these 2 because these are special attackers. So you could slot these on the team with it if you wanted to. I just wouldn't recommend putting any of these on the same team, right? I've seen some teams with Dondozo and Gyarados, like rain teams and things like that, but I just wouldn't recommend it. I feel like it's doubling up on the typing, and you can like build a more consistent team when you spread out your typings, right? So you have more switch-ins. And I build a lot of hyper offensive teams myself, but I do like to play defensive a lot. I feel like I play my best when I'm playing defensive, and I have bulky teams, and I like to switch around a lot. And so Gyarados and Palafin are more my type of Pokemon. But like I said, Azumarill is a good Pokemon if you want to give it a try. It is really good. If you go back and watch the Hartford Regionals, you'll see that it was on stream a couple times. It did do well, and it did threaten like a lot of damage. Like you have to deal. You can't just ignore it, right? You have to burn it. You have to put it to sleep. You have to switch in your Amoonguss. You have to switch in your Intimidate to try to deal with, because it's doing so much damage. And Fluttermane really doesn't want to deal with it. It doesn't want to take Aqua Jets. And this, like alongside Pelipper in the rain, is just dealing so much damage, right? It's like a baby. Even though a baby Palafin exists, this is like Big Brother Palafin, right? It's like you have the baby Palafin, then you have the big brother, and they're both like children of the superhero Palafin. And then Azumarill is just like, okay, I'm gonna do what little baby Palafin can't do, but I'm gonna do it immediately and not have to wait for a superhero to come in, right? I don't have to go into the telephone booth and put on my cape to come out. So that's kind of what Azumarill does. But I just want to spotlight Azumarill and, you know, show that it can be used. I will probably build a team around it and feature it on my channel. So I have that coming up. Also, guys, look out for my Cloyster video, which is another water type. I didn't want to put on this list because it's not common at all in the meta, but I did build a team around Cloyster, and I'm going to showcase it in our next video. So be on the lookout for that. If you like this video, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notification. I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, bye.